Welcome everyone to the Captive Audience. It is a special edition. It is the last one for 2024. And I am Kevin Hoare, who's on to 2025. And with me here are our frequent co-hosts, Donna Anderson and Sunny Danforth, who is wishing everybody a Happy New Year, as you can see. And it's great to be here with you guys. It's been a long time since we've all been in one place virtually like this.
Yes, it has. Probably about a year.
Yeah.
Wow, that long. Wow. It goes by fast.
It does go by fast, and a lot happened in the last year. Of course, I think one of the first things to mention is that we lost one of our co-hosts, David Darnell, and wonderful man. There's no replacing him, but I think we also got a chance to appreciate him in a way that it just doesn't happen all the time. And many people got to appreciate him, including people, as Sunny, as you know, walked up to us at the Celebration of Life event and just thanked us for doing that show with him. We're doing Captive Audience with him, and I know we did a Captive Audience special about the whole event too. And it's just, when you look back on the year, that does put a lot of things in perspective. A year ago, he was right here with us.
Yes, he was, and there's been a lot of changes in 2024. Some not so good, like losing David, and others fabulous, like Trump winning.
Yeah.
And the gamut in between.
Well, and I think, if David was then working the chain gang with the Angels there, he must have done a little extra pull for DJT. I think he might have gotten some extra help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the value in the moment. I mean, the value of being in the moment is what I kind of took away from that. I mean, just like you said a moment ago, he was here and he's not here. And that's one of the reasons why we really need to value the moment we're in and be the best we can, while we're in the moment, because this is all we can control. We can't undo yesterday and we can't do much about tomorrow, but we can be the best we can right now. And so there's a takeaway. To have been able to spend time with him, I consider myself blessed.
Yeah, and a Marine Colonel friend of mine reminded me when he showed me this whiteboard that they had in when he was serving in Baghdad in the Green Zone, and it was an X for every day that he was there of a 6-month tour, and he said that reminded me that every day is a gift, and then he would proceed to tell some of the stories about how like three houses down from him in the barracks area got hit by a rocket, killed the guys that were in it. They were asleep. That was it. And of course, he used to go do ride-alongs with all those guys that were trying to figure out how to counter the IEDs. And there are a lot of stories from that. And so I think it puts into perspective that the things that happened in the last year, that the people matter, that that you love, and that's why we do this, because that's why we actually talk about these issues. Some people are like, well, you guys just seem to have an insatiable appetite for the news and politics. And it's like, none of that is separate from our lives. It's so connected. And getting the wrong people running things, which is what we've had, let's make no bones about it, is transformative in a bad way, and getting the right people can be the exact opposite. And I think that's what we're heading into here very soon.
Well, if I could just piggyback on a comment you just made, I think the events of the last 4 years were really illustrative of how important politics are to our lives on the personal level. Before that, I think a lot of us has lived our life in what happens in DC, what happens on a university campus. That's over there. I can just keep living my life. But as of 4 years ago, and those other micro events that happened that did affect us, not that big a deal for most people. But when they started forcing you to put something in your body that you didn't know what it was, start forcing you to, in order to keep your job, to do this, start forcing you to wear a rag over your face. Then I think we all began to wake up and realize the reason why we've got to be engaged, because if we don't, they will enslave us. And so that may be, as horrible as it sounds, maybe the biggest blessing of last year is like your mom grabbing you when you were a kid and shaking you to get your attention. That's
Yeah.
what it took. And unfortunately, that's just what it took. But now we're awake, if you will, and engaged, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, COVID was the beginning of the wake-up call. And really, it was just the beginning, wasn't it? That a lot of people who didn't care about politics and wouldn't have spent 5 seconds listening to this show or talking about what happened in the news or who was running the country, suddenly they tuned in. They started showing up at school board meetings. They started showing up at city councils and county commissions, started asking tough questions of our leaders. Sometimes they didn't get answers. Sometimes they got shut down, where they're told, you're not allowed to ask that. And
which in and of itself is an answer.
It's an answer, and it's also a reason to get involved. Like, if you can be silenced when you feel like somebody's telling you what to do with your life, and it's not good for you, you don't agree with it, then the First Amendment means a hell of a lot more all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yes, and when the government decides who's essential, what's an essential, an essential worker, and we're all essential.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is no picking and choosing.
Yeah. We've taken freedom so for granted. We've taken freedom to have your kids educated and you have some say-so over it. We've taken freedom to have control over your own body and you having some say-so. We've taken that for granted. We've taken for granted living in a relatively inflation-free society. We take it for granted not being forced to hate another race just because of the color of their skin. We take all of this stuff for granted, that you can walk the streets and be safe at night, that you don't have your neighborhood flooded with a bunch of illegals. We took all of that stuff for granted until they took it from us.
They did. And it was interesting, too, that then we found that there were people who actually agreed with them, who agreed with the people who were doing this. And we still encounter them every day. You can go to any supermarket and see all these people walking around with masks still. Just a few. I just saw one the other day who was walking their dog outside with a mask on.
Me too.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that mask is totally worthless outside. And your dog's not going to catch anything from you or vice versa. This is not happening. But it's like a mental illness, and it has ingrained itself in parts of our society, but it's also like a neon sign saying, I am a progressive liberal and I want to control your life because I want to make you wear this mask too. And that, even if they can't prove that a vaccine actually does what it's supposed to do, we're going to make you take it anyway. And of course, that's starting to get questioned now. So like some of the transformation that we're seeing as we go into 2025 is, just think how far we've come from Fauci
yes,
to RFK Jr. It doesn't get more the opposite in terms of attitude about what we have to do for public health. And maybe it's about time.
Yeah. And I think as a nation and even a world, we had to go through what we went through for the wake up to happen, to realize that instead of getting swept down the rabbit hole of tyranny, so while it's tough, I'm glad we went through it so that we can be where we're at today. There's a long way to go. Just because there are a lot of, it makes me think of all the kids that are in school that have been all over the United States that have been brainwashed.
Yeah.
And so there kind of has to be a detox of that, a different type of training going, no, it's about your freedom and you don't have to do that. And we still have a long way to go, but we're on the right path. And that is the good news. And the November election was the decider in that.
Well, they were sliding the woke stuff in for a long time before
Yeah.
COVID, but they were doing it slowly, and they were making it like putting it in with no objections, because people are like, oh yeah, well, we want to be nice to people who are disadvantaged or oppressed. Okay, sure, I'm not going to say no to that. And then we got George Floyd riots, and then we got COVID, which then caused a bunch of parents to start paying attention to what their kids are being taught when they were doing Zoom school from home. And they're like, they said, what? They told you what?
Right.
And all of a sudden we found out that this had almost penetrated like a virus that had been dormant, until all of a sudden it went live. And then we all started noticing the effect. And that was what Elon Musk referred to as the woke mind virus.
Yes.
That in fact does exist. And I think received a massive blow in the 2024 election, that there are literally people who have decided to run the opposite direction from what was woke. And there are people who won elections and won votes because they talked about this issue, which it used to be, don't talk about, culture war issues. If you want to get elected, just talk about, inflation and the economy and public safety or whatever. And it's like, those are important issues. And those certainly were both of those things were being undermined by the woke stuff. And then some people ran ads. I remember seeing one that was running in Ohio for Bernie Moreno, I think is his name, who beat Sherrod Brown for U.S. Senate and helped deliver the U.S. Senate to us. He was the first one that I saw use this and said, Sherrod Brown, he's not for us. He's for they, them. And it had a picture of that weird bald guy that was stealing luggage, wearing dresses, that was supposed to be in charge of nuclear security. And then, of course, the Interior Secretary, the admiral or whatever that, is in charge of that, who has transitioned. And I think that that's not, you could probably get away with all the woke stuff if you didn't screw up everything else. But once you screwed up everything else, then they started saying, why are you doing this other crap? Huh? Like inflation, solve it. Done hearing about the bald guy stealing the luggage who dresses up in dresses and makeup,
Yeah. And I think a large part of this is they do live in their own echo chamber. And I hate using that term because it's so used. I don't think it's overused, though. But the leadership elite, they live in their own echo chamber. I come to the conclusion that they truly believe this stuff because they never come in contact with the regular Joe. So they can sit there, like I can't remember the media guy who didn't know what the price of butter was. And I had no clue because they don't live in that world. They
Morning Joe. That's the guy. He's like $7.
Yeah.
What? That's outrageous. He said that after the election, by the way. That just showed what it took to get some of these guys to pay attention to the price of butter.
Yeah, it's meaningless to them because of the amount of money. I was going to say make, but they don't make. They grift, ridiculous amounts of money. So they don't live like the regular public. They only talk to each other. They literally only talk to each other. So that's why they just find it unbelievable that Trump would win. It kind of reminds me of, I can't remember, she was the editor of the Washington Post, I think, back when Reagan ran. And she said, I can't believe Reagan won. I didn't know a single person who voted for Reagan. The guy won 49 states, and you didn't know one person?
Yeah.
That gives you an idea of the world they live in. They never have to hear it. There
are people that receive a steady diet of MSLSD and the Communist News Network, and they had no idea that this stuff was going on. Yeah. They had no idea that Hunter Biden was literally guilty as sin already of everything, and that the Russia collusion was a complete hoax. They had those two things they didn't know.
Yeah.
We have to remember all of the things that were so-called conspiracies has all come to truth, to end up being truth.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say all, most. And as Lori Shaw says, hey, the lawsuits, we're winning lawsuits against all of this. And And look at all the lawsuits that Trump has won and pushed back on. This is the person who has been the subject of most of the lawfare. And the lawfare is now losing, and I'll tell you, all of us have
or
to be on our knees.
reversing on them, right?
Yes. And thanking God for the win of Donald Trump in the November election, because we would not be this happy or feeling that our country will be heading in a better direction had the other side won. It would be damn sad. And so, but there's a lot of good things going on all over the world because of people running and saying, we do need to take care of our countries. It's okay to put your country first. Doesn't mean you're excluding anybody else.
We're
Look
just
what
doing what the other
Javier
countries
Milei
are
is doing.
Yeah, that's what the other countries are doing. France doesn't come out and say, we should just do what's best for the United States. No, they're saying France first, and then we'll figure out what's good for everyone else and see if we can, work something out.
Mhm.
When you talk about conspiracy theories, there's a couple that come to mind here. One is we were all saying in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, which actually started under Trump with the deep state, is that people had weaponized the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for controlling the House of Representatives by 3 seats after the 2022 election, we wouldn't have had any congressional investigation of that. And just a few weeks ago, they published, I think it was like a 19,000 page report about all the things that were done to weaponize government. And these people that did this stuff, they got to find them. They got to haul them out in front of the public, bring them under oath, make them tell the truth, corroborate all this. And then if they committed crimes, send them to jail. And if they take the fifth, make sure everybody knows they just took the fifth, because they can't tell you the truth about what they were actually doing. And just today, or in the last 24 hours, I think the Justice Department guy in DC who turned down the request from the prosecutor in the Hunter Biden case, the guy in Delaware, that guy asked if he would join him in filing charges in Washington, D.C., because there was obviously more going on than just Hunter Biden having a gun illegally, which is all they were trying to bring him up on. And that guy refused to do that. And that guy just resigned today. The other guy who's resigned in the last 24 hours is the guy who was doing all the prosecutions of the J6 people.
Yeah.
And that guy is going to find himself in front of a congressional committee. And he's going to explain why he delivered they're going to be sued. Now, he's probably not going to himself be held personally liable. There's sort of, what do they call that? Limited something or other for law enforcement and prosecutors where you can't go after them personally. But if there's misconduct, and I think they're going to go after Jack Smith, the guy who's resigned and filed all the cases against Trump in DC, they're going to go after these guys. They've already got Fannie Wilson kicked off the case in Georgia too, and it's all crumbled. But we've got to follow through. We've got to hold these guys accountable and expose what they did, because they actually tried to weaponize the justice system. And then I just heard today Joe Biden said one of his great regrets. First of all, he thinks he would have won if he'd stayed on the ticket. Okay, go with that. And he said, and he was super angry at the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, because he thought he should have gone harder at Trump.
Yeah, of course. But, so I think that these lawyers need to lose their law license, because what they were doing, they're making up law, then applying a federal law to a state deal, of those applying a federal thing into a state court, things that when they never would win on appeal. And I truthfully believe that this is malfeasance of the law, and they should lose their law license for undergoing taking part in this type of action.
starting with Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. She should be one of the ones, and that other guy, the guy that did the bogus case that they're still trying to sentence Trump for in um, uh, the records case, right, where they
Oh,
tried
yeah.
to turn misdemeanor um, records filing error into a felony, and Judge Mershon, and then what's the name of the guy, the New York district attorney, that guy. They got to go and figure him out because he's destroying that city, by the way.
Yes.
He's making it so that criminals are literally running around on the streets, killing people.
Bragg.
Meanwhile,
Yeah, Alvin Bragg.
Alvin Bragg, that's it.
Well,
Yeah.
New York's governor is not. She's not helping either. I'm sure you heard about her commentary around the subways and how safe they are. Like within hours of that poor lady being burned to death. I mean, it's unreal how bad they are. But one thing I would add to all of this is also an indictment of the press, because none of this stuff would have been able to be carried forward as much as it did if the press weren't carrying the water, for the Democratic Party. And that's what they've been doing for the last, at least 8 years, for sure. And probably one of the best things to come out of all of this is the destruction of their credibility. I mean, you look at the ratings of the big networks, they are in the toilet. And what's happened is people are no longer trusting it. People are no longer watching it. People are going to sites like this. And you look at the podcast, you look like Joe Rogan, for example. That's where people are. Or you look at, all those sites. Those are the places people are going to get their news. And that's like one of the best things ever, is to get the way to get the communication vehicle to the general public away from the people that run the Communist Party.
Yeah, they've destroyed themselves, and they were prepared to just do whatever was necessary to see if they could roll the election and get it to go the way they wanted. And even that, they kind of failed at, because, I mean, Joe Biden went into a debate and they had to admit he sucked badly. And then, of course, he got replaced. That's some of the big news of the year, is that, the nominee, the presumed nominee, became the presumed nobody. And he's just spent all his time on vacation since then, every once in a while popping out to mouth off and damage Kamala's campaign, who became the nominee. What's crazy about Kamala is that she also couldn't handle the media. She has all these people that were totally ready to roll over for her, and they manipulated an interview on 60 Minutes. They took an answer she gave to one question and put it in front of another question that she was asked to make her look good, and then did the opposite to Trump. And I believe there's a lawsuit that's been filed about that regarding election interference. We're going to see a lot of these things. I think the lawfare is going to reverse the other direction. And the thing that I heard today is that there's a class action lawsuit by the people prosecuted on January 6th, relating, I guess, to unequal justice and prosecutorial conduct and abuse. It's a $50 billion lawsuit that they filed against the Department of Justice and the U.S. government. And even though I am concerned about spending another $50 billion, given some of the awards that we've seen come down for, like, Jean Carroll claiming that Trump did something to her, and he's like, I have no idea who this person is. And I believe him, because he said every time they've said, well, you can't believe a guy like that. And it's like, well, a guy like that, every time he's, defended himself and said, I have no idea what they're talking about, or it's complete fake news and bogus. He's been right. Press has been liars. And now the justice system has been poisoned by this. And we have to root it out. That is an essential 2025 priority. And I actually have a lot of faith that Attorney General Pam Bondi, nominee, and also FBI Director Kash Patel, heads are going to roll. They're going to roll.
He's going to be so good. We got to get him in there.
Yeah. And that's going to be, so the coming weeks, because, there's the long term, right? And there's the things we want to see happen. And then there's sort of the short term, the tactical. And it's going to be very interesting here in the coming weeks. So today, President Trump endorsed Mike Johnson for Speaker.
Mhm.
Right now, it doesn't look like it looks like he has to get everybody who hasn't said that they won't vote for him amongst the Republicans. I do actually hope that Republicans just get their act together on this, because the consequences are steeper than they were last time, because they get sworn in on the 3rd, the new Congress. They can't do any business until there is a speaker. And the first order of business is to count the electoral votes and certify the election on January 6th, 3 days later. So this thing about doing 15 votes for speaker, that ain't going to happen. And also, we should be literally placing legislation in front of this Congress that is the 100-day agenda for President Trump, conducting committee hearings, refining it, and having it ready so that he literally starts signing some of the stuff into law not long after he's in office, starting with securing the border. They got to do that like it is like yesterday. And I'm actually very concerned that, frankly, there's probably like 10,000 terrorists in the country and they don't know where they are. But easily. Because
sure
11 million people came in, 2 million gotaways. They don't even know who they are. Some gotaway just lit a homeless woman on fire and killed her in New York. How many guys like that are running around in this country?
It's amazing more hasn't happened, actually, given how loose this thing's been.
I'm concerned something's going to happen very soon, actually, because if you want to distract people a lot from turning things around, throw a bunch of this stuff at them. You know, give them so many problems on January 21st on, you know, just 9/11 them, right? Just, you know, that becomes the dominant thing that's happening. And frankly, there won't even be people confirmed and appointed to a lot of these positions when he comes in, because it's just not possible, right? So we're going to be using the mostly Biden administration to execute the Trump policies in the middle of what could be some crises. I'm concerned about that.
So I want to answer Bobby Richardson's question. She says, "Do we want Mike Johnson to stay as Speaker?" Well, the thing is Trump has just endorsed him. Trump has weighed in, and he is the person who, you know, there's always things that go on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. And I'm going to say, like it or not, I would ask our Congress to vote for Mike Johnson. And that's who Trump said, let's go forward. Let's move on. And he's endorsed him as Speaker. So I back what Trump wants, you know,
and time is of the
and
essence,
have to trust what he's asking. What, Kevin?
Time is of the essence too. We can't screw around for 6 months, because the opportunity to fix things will peter away as politics and events carry us in a potentially a different direction very quickly.
Because don't forget, they did kill that omnibus bill. They killed the omnibus that, you know, was to be a CR. And so, and while Trump didn't get the debt ceiling lifted and all of that, what they did pass was a reasonable CR. And one of my concerns with any passage of any of that, I would have been happy if they'd have shut the government down, was because of the spending that Biden could do. And yet look what he's doing. You know, what did he just give away? $2.5 billion today?
Yeah, he did. And they were literally helicoptering money out the back door there, calling the Green New Deal and the Inflation Reduction Act, throwing money at people as fast as they could. But I think the biggest concern that I have too is, you know, before we had nothing but one devil's bargain after another. We had to have something that Chuck Schumer would advance in the Senate, and we had to have something that Joe Biden would sign into law for it to become law. So we as a friend of mine used to say, we're the one-legged man in the ass-kicking contest. And we're done with that. We got to start acting like we are in charge. And once you are in charge, we are much more united on these policies now as having all three, the presidency, the Senate, and the House. That doesn't mean you just rifle things through without thinking about them or making sure that you're representing your constituencies. But the game playing has got to end, because the key to changing what happens in the future is showing people what we can do that is the right thing, that fixes the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Do that as quickly as possible. We're not playing defense anymore. We are on offense. And offense means you got to take the initiative, and you got to stay on offense. The Democrats, their job, as I see it, as they see it, I'm sure, is going to be to slow things down, to file lawsuits, to stop every executive order that's signed, to tie up everything in committees and in confusion, and then create this kabuki dance of other issues that absorbs the public's attention in the media, so that they don't actually stay focused on the things that are getting done and how things are being fixed. I am concerned about the economy, because I think actually it's still kind of bumping along. It's still got problems. I'm optimistic that there's going to be a Trump boom. But how do you deliver a Trump boom? Well, part of the way you do that is you get the Trump tax cuts renewed. So you can't screw around forever. You got to get some of this stuff done, because the economy, the markets, business owners, they're all watching, and they're saying, you know what? If this gets locked up in 2 months of chaos, maybe the economy is going to hit the skids. And you know what the media is going to do with that? They're going to assign the blame to President Trump and the Republicans. And then you lose the House and you lose the Senate next time.
And that's the strategy. And the strategy is to play this as long as they possibly can. And then when it doesn't go, they blame it on the Republicans. So this whole be nice thing and this whole attempt to be party unity and all this stuff they're always talking about, that's out the window. There is no negotiating with the enemy when the enemy wants you dead. I mean, we have to look at the Democrat Party is the way the Israelis have to look at their relationship with the Palestinians. Their objective is to kill you. There's no negotiating with that. And as long as the Democrat Party is controlled by progressives, which it is right now, and for the foreseeable future, it looks like that. I think one of the more fascinating things about this whole thing is that the party's completely collapsed. Who's the leadership? Can anybody tell me? Who's the center left leadership? Who's the moderate left? Where is it? I can't think of a single person. I mean, it's not going to be Pelosi. It's not going to be Clinton. It's not going to be Kamala. It's not going to be any of those. It's not Obama. Who is it? We don't know. They're going to be in the wilderness for a while now.
And let's not help them find their way out of the wilderness. They need to stay there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And they did just reject AOC as the head of a committee and chose a more moderate guy, so good on them. But I'll tell you, we just remember in the Senate, we have to have 6 Democrats in the Senate to work with us. Yeah. And, but I think some of the big things, especially regarding immigration, it's already been through the courts. There's things that's already been done. So I feel, and I can be wrong, but I feel that's like a done deal. We've already been there, done that.
Right. Pardon? Like remain in Mexico. Boom.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. And mass deportation, Trump is going to enact and do the very same thing that another president had done years ago. And so it's already been done. He's not reinventing the wheel. And I think there's going to be some things that we're going to see that might shock us, might not shock us, but it's going to really shock some people. But we might be shocked too. I don't know.
Well, we've never played hardball before. I think this is the first time that, in my memory anyway, the Republican Party has finally played hardball. When you hear language like "we'll primary you,"
yeah,
because that's exactly what the Democrats have done. Right? Is go to those Democrats who are in those seats that are more conservative, and essentially say to them, "We'll primary you." Right? So whoever's up for election next, you'll be primaried out, and we have the power to do it finally.
That's right. They just the voters just loan you the power for 2 years, and that's why you got to show what you can do with it. And I think we just have to shift our mentality towards being on offense now. And we have a president who is more than happy to go on offense at a rapid pace. I think things are going to happen very, very quickly, and I think the media has lost so much credibility they and the Democrats are trying to figure out where they can find their credibility back again. And I don't think they're going to find it very easily. I
Not with
also
the
don't
current
think that
Trump
Mike
administration.
Johnson's going to be the sole guy saying what a deal looks like.
Mhm.
So if you just get somebody who can kind of keep people together and get the business done in an orderly manner, Trump is going to make sure that he's listening to these guys. You
Well, I'll
know,
tell you, one of the most outrageous things at the time, but in retrospect, maybe one of the best things, was during that debate when the moderators kept fact checking Trump and saying nothing to Kamala. Now you're sitting here and you're outraged about the whole thing, but the good thing about that is the entire country got to see
I saw it.
just how biased they are. Any independent looking at that, forget about the hardcore Democrats, they don't care. But the independents were the ones who saw it and thought, "Oh my goodness, look at that." And they're
Yep.
so blinded by their own stuff that they couldn't understand how bad that looked for them. Because not only did that sort of thing cost them the election, but it cost them, more important long term, the trust of the people. I mean, no one trusts that matters the regular media anymore.
Yeah,
No,
and what
they
the
don't.
Democrats actually were for was terrible, and so they were stuck with a bunch of stuff people hated.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Sonny, go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. But you know, the our congressmen, our Congress and our Senate Republicans have got to unify behind what Trump wants to do, because this is one, why they were elected, why we do have the majority in both. And, you know, this was his election is unprecedented, winning the popular vote and the electoral vote. And, you know, I heard somebody say, oh, it wasn't by much. Well, you know, it might not have been nationwide, but it was a win anyway. And it doesn't happen like that. You know, it doesn't happen that you win both of them, and the electoral and the popular vote. And the people want change. And I want to see for me, I want to see the Republicans playing hardball.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want our nation going status quo and what's been going on. This has been a frickin' mess.
Yeah,
And it's time to turn things around, you know, shut the border down, get our economy going. I know Trump has those things like in the bag.
yeah,
You know, this is a savvy businessman. But to what is going to be very interesting, and hold on to your shorts because of what Doji's going to do.
Doge. Yeah,
You know, that is going to be interesting. And because of the Chevron decision by the Supreme Court, that is going to allow cutting. We need to cut a lot of these redundancies that are happening in agencies, cut some of this agencies. And this is the type of thing that Javier Milei did, I believe, in Argentina. He
yeah,
just started slashing, you know what, we don't need this and we don't need that. And that's exactly what we can do. And when you start cutting that funding, now you have money for something else. And I mean, and this is so it's going to be quite interesting in 2025 what we see. But it's not just what's been happening here in the US. Look at what's been happening around the world. There's a lot, you know, look at Trump
the
hasn't
Trump
even
effect.
the
Yeah.
Trump effect. Absolutely. You know, he's not even sworn in. And there is a lot of things going on. And now Trump effect started after he was first elected. And you know, politics is playing the long game. It is not the short game. It's not what's happening tomorrow. It is what's happening in years. And it takes a while to keep winning and having a winning strategy. That things are changing in the world.
Well,
And
I
I
tell you,
think,
I think for the first time, dovetailing what you just said, we have what you could almost call an international election. The whole rest of the world knew who the candidates were, knew who the issues were. If you looked at the news from across the world, which is what I was looking at, they all knew these issues, and it's amazing. And the reason for that is they face the same problems we face because the same people are running things. This is the one world government crowd, right? So it's not just a national election. Now it's become an international thing because what they want to do is take away all borders and have one rule world. That's one of the reasons why you look around the world, the same border issues we face here, they have them in Sweden, Denmark, France, Germany. You go around the world, they all have the same issue, and that's they're being overrun because of their leadership. The general public is not in favor of this, but their leadership is shoving it down their throats. Now you literally have riots in the streets in places like Great Britain. It's just crazy that this is happening because they face the exact same thing we face. So a Trump win for here, they know that what happens here dramatically impacts what happens there. And
well, the
so
French government collapsed. The German government collapsed.
Yes.
The Iranians started saying, we might like to negotiate. And
Syria change.
Syria fell apart and got taken over, and Assad is gone. I think that the support for Hamas is going to just dry up, and all those Arab countries are starting to say, "Well, we might have somebody we can work with."
Yeah, look at our Canadian neighbors. What's his name? Polivier, I think is his name. The conservative Canadian. That guy is brilliant. And what's his name up there is about the
Trudeau.
Trudeau is about to be a gunner, right?
Yeah, yeah. When Trump calls Trudeau the governor of our 51st state.
And what's great about that? Did you catch the leaders of the provinces were like, that may not be a bad idea.
Yeah, some of them are like, you know what? We're kind of sick of this guy too. Maybe hightail it on out of here. But
Canadians could enjoy some low taxes too.
I also think that some of the bad actors in the world know he's serious, and they knew Biden ever since Afghanistan wasn't serious, and that led to all these conflicts.
Yeah,
China's got to be thinking twice about doing anything now, even though we have a long way to go to make sure that in the long run we can deter them. There's a lot of stuff that didn't get done for the last 4 years. It's a mess with our military that we got to fix. But I also know that they're going to be serious as a heart attack about fixing it.
I think the reason Trump is going after the Panama Canal is actually to thwart China.
Yeah.
It is. It's absolutely and truthfully, there was a clause. And, Jimmy Carter's passed away. He's the man who cost us the Panama Canal for $1. And
you're still on Wednesday podcast. No,
you can still talk about it, Wednesday.
Well, but what you're saying is there's a clause in the Panama Canal Treaty which says that we can step in when it needs to be defended in our national security interests, and China's influence over that canal must be countered. And I also think that it was kind of a message to a lot of other people, including China, that have been doing this kind of stuff in all throughout Central and South America, in the Pacific Rim. These countries that are cutting deals with China, they're gonna find that the art of the deal is coming their way. And it's a carrot and it's a stick, because we're not gonna allow the influence of a malign actor to start undermining our security. That's it. Period.
It's a brilliant strategy on China's part, and we're already seeing the adverse impact of it. It is absolutely. It's called the Belt and Road Initiative, is what they call it. And I think it's Sri Lanka, for example. What they do is they find these countries that have some strategic asset or strategic location militarily that they want, and they're poor. They lend a bunch of money at what looks like great terms, knowing very well they can't pay it back. And then when they can't pay it back, well, we'll just take that asset from you instead. So in the case of Sri Lanka, they just took this port from them, for example. They got like 3,000 of these initiatives going on around the world, by the way.
They do.
Two of the 5 ports in Panama are run by the Chinese. And my understanding is they're building a bridge across the canal. Now, you think about that from a military perspective. We have a 2-ocean navy, and the fastest way to get across those 2 oceans through the Panama Canal is 1,500 miles to go around the Strait of Magellan in order to do that, which is notoriously difficult because of the weather down there. And you can imagine the cost to go around that. Well, what if we just drop this bridge in the Panama Canal? Now you can't go through the canal, right? I mean, you got to give it to the Chinese. They are like strategically brilliant. So if we want to go off, we want to tee off on Taiwan, we just eliminated half your navy from being able to participate in it because they can't get from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Yeah, they play the long game. That's right.
Yep. So these are the things that the media never reports or thinks about. That's why you guys listen to us, though, right?
Yeah, we do. We
That's
report
right.
these things. We talk about them. And I will say too that there is, when there's a new sheriff in town, all the stuff that's going on gets exposed more readily. Biden didn't even want to
I
admit there
can't
was a
wait.
balloon floating over our country. And they still won't admit who's doing the drones. They still won't tell the truth about that. And if it's so bad that you can't tell us, then maybe you should tell us, because you're not doing anything about it. And so, this is we're getting messed with because we've got a giant Joe Biden kick me sign on our back, and we got to rip that sucker off and turn around and start sending a boot into some other keisters, and it's going to start happening right away. And I hope it's in time, because there's a lot of things that can, these wars, they have a life of their own. They're almost like a fire that starts someplace and it doesn't seem that bad. And before you know it, it turns into a 5-alarm fire and it's burning half a city block down. That is what you end up with. They have a life of their own, and they seek out fuel to keep them going. Now, I know he wants to end the wars that are going on, but ultimately it's done through strength. You don't do it through a position of weakness or begging, and he knows that. And Joe Biden and the idiots that were running Joe Biden, let's face it, he wasn't making these decisions.
No. He's still not making the decisions.
He's not. He's got blankety blank Blinken doing stuff, and that guy's going to go down in history as the single worst foreign policy guy in just world history. I mean, he is that bad. I did want to mention briefly about Jimmy Carter. I know that people say don't speak ill of the dead, and he did just pass away. And he was a good man in many respects, something that I don't think you can say about a lot of the figures that populate the Democrat Party now. He was just not a good president. And he was clearly in over his head, and frankly, he almost lost the Cold War. He tried to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on that. And I will give Jimmy Carter credit for one thing: the Camp David peace accords. That's it. The only other thing you can give him credit for is kind of a backhanded compliment, which is we needed to have Jimmy Carter so that we get Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And we did get Ronald Reagan because the Republican Party wasn't exactly all on board with Reagan in 76. And by 80, we're like, that guy.
Yeah.
That guy, right? Give me that mic. I paid for it.
It's funny. The parallels are pretty amazing. If you think about it, how we got from Carter to Reagan and how we got from Biden to Trump. I mean, Middle East disaster. Yeah. Biden created the monster Middle East disaster in Afghanistan and an ongoing one right now. Of course, we know what happened with Carter, with the whole Khomeini
inflation.
Crisis, right? The inflation, complete parallel, completely weak presidents in both cases, generating a situation that led to the Trump, which led to the Reagan. The parallels are absolutely amazing. And in fact, and then this overly nice thing, which liberals have a tendency to do, that liberal mentality, if we're just nice to people, which is one of the reasons why he gave up the Panama Canal, because we want to be nice. We don't want to come across as colonial and all this other stuff, which just leads to another mad leftist, outfit taking that thing over, which is precisely what happened. It's amazing, their inability to understand the reality of what Kissinger used to call realpolitik. It comes through strength. It never comes from being nice. It never comes from negotiating in fairness and all of that. It comes from strength. That's how human nature is. I wish I could say it was any other way, but that's just how it is.
So if you give progressives all the marbles, all the control, and I can see you guys are saying here, Marjorie, you just said maybe that's why we got Biden. I think that is, because towards the last year of the Trump administration, we learned something that Trump was warning us about: the deep state, and the fake news, right? And and that was, remember how they used to malign him for conspiracy theories, and he's attacking the media, he's terrible, he's bad for free speech, and it turns out those are the guys that were trying to kill free speech, and they were trying to put out propaganda that deceived people. And that probably is the reason why it had to be exposed. They had to see just how bad it could get if you let them do the crap that they do. And
thank God Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
and that was the beginning of the shift back in the other direction,
Yeah.
right? I also think that as horrifying an occurrence as it was, I think the assassination attempt got people's attention
Yeah.
because, and it changed Trump a little bit too. He began to realize this ain't just me campaigning because I need to go get back into power and fix this mess.
No.
No,
For
communists play
some
for keeps.
reason, the Lord wanted this to happen.
Well,
You
and
know,
communists play for keeps. I think one of the things you have to recognize, these people at bottom, it's terrible to say this, but it's the reality. We have to all face reality. They are immoral. At bottom, they are immoral. They don't care about principles. Look at the reaction to, for example, the HMO executive who got assassinated basically in New York City a couple of weeks ago.
yep,
The response to that has been stunning. Not so much that it happened. I mean, these kinds of things happen, but the response on the left to that was maybe the guy deserved it. Basically, he did deserve it because of all the evil things that HMOs are doing. Now, hey, look, I don't agree with a lot of stuff that managed care plans do. No question about it. But I could never endorse shooting a man in the back of the head, got a wife and 2 kids, and you going on the news and saying it's good this guy got shot in the back of the head. What blows my mind about that is not just the immorality of the statement, but the utter lack of self-consciousness to not recognize that that same philosophy could be applied to you. You,
yeah,
the person who's saying that, what you're saying is it's okay to shoot somebody in the back of the head that I disagree with. A country can't work that way. It
No.
just can't. But
yeah,
that's the mindset of the communists, of the progressive leftists. If you disagree with me, at the end of the day, I have a right to kill you.
yeah. I will dehumanize you
Yeah.
and call you a parasite on the system and talk about how you have to be terminated. It doesn't matter if you're a loving father of 2 kids and you just are doing your level best at a tough job. You're a parasite, and we're gonna take you out. And that is something that was exposed with that whole occurrence too. I hope there's a constructive outcome from it, but I also think that that guy's Antifa. We've seen this for years. So I wasn't surprised at all when they started describing the guy's views and his motivations. I'm like, you can just read Andy No's column for the last 6 years and you can see all the people that are saying the same stuff that I'm surprised hasn't resulted in even more stuff like this. And it probably will continue to happen until there's a full commitment that we get rid of the Alvin Braggs out of office and replace them with people that say, we're not going to tolerate people like this doing stuff in our city and our state. That's it. We're going to go get them.
That's a long-term fix because the institutions that produce these people, they go through these universities, these leftist universities, which is pretty much all of them. You look at who sits in Congress, and I'm talking Congress, state level, federal level, doesn't matter. They all come from, like, 95% of these guys are lawyers. Something like 99% of them come through these universities where they're all like hardcore leftists. All the professors are hardcore leftists. This is why this is a generational problem, in terms of how we fix that. And look at who we got for president. I think I could be wrong. This is the first president we've ever had who wasn't a lawyer or who wasn't a general.
Yeah.
I think that might be the case.
Or had served in the military in some capacity.
In some capacity,
Yeah.
right. That's one of the
Jimmy Carter was in the military. He was
yeah.
Naval Academy.
Yeah, but this is a citizen. Like the way the republic was originally designed to be was the citizen came, stepped out of office, did their thing for a few terms, went back to being a farmer or whatever the job was, right? Somehow we need to get back to that. So you don't have these people coming from what it is these people come from the elite group of people who all think the same thing, all talk to each other, don't have experiences, don't even know the rest of the country. We have a person in office now who knows the country. This is a guy who used to put on a hard hat and work on some construction sites.
And he knows DC now too.
Yep,
That's the other thing.
So he could walk into a black barbershop and just rap to them. He could he could sit in
And
the
he did.
and look legitimate doing it. I mean,
Right.
he could walk into any crowd anywhere. He can go to a World WEE wrestling match and relate to that. He could step into the Senate and can relate to that.
He could be in a McDonald's drive-through.
Yeah, a McDonald's,
Right.
And it's like
The fry cook.
Yeah.
And that's why people love him, because he is them. In spite of the fact that he's a billionaire, he gets it. And we've got a ton of people sitting in these places who have never done any of this stuff, don't get it.
Yeah. And if you look at his website right now, the Trump website, one thing will stand out to you is that it actually starts out with, let me see if I can find it here. I just had it up on my screen. It starts out with the statement. Let me see. Here we go. They're not after me. They're after you. I'm just standing in the way. That's the quote on the homepage of the website. And it's so true. It's still true. It's as true as it was the first time he said it. The Democrats, meanwhile, have not figured out what's wrong. And they think they just need younger people. That's the beginning of solving their problem. They were the people that were holding on to power well into the late 70s and early 80s, some longer than that. And they, the Nancy Pelosi's and so on, that are, the Democrats feel like they just need younger people to express these progressive ideas. They don't know their policies are terrible. And when you mentioned this, Sonny, before about Doge, we need to unearth all these things that could be done to save money that are going to be common sense. They're not going to be like, we hate these people and we want to get rid of them. It's going to be, actually, this stuff's ineffective. That stuff's redundant. That stuff, no one knows why we're doing it, and we got to stop doing it. And have all these empty office buildings no one's going to. Why are we keeping those things?
$4 million to study, drunk dogs to see if they're more aggressive, or
Nails
whatever.
running on
all of these
treadmills. Yeah. No, there's so many things, and all that stuff. What we need to do, if you're on offense, is have the Democrats defend it. They need to spend their political capital, their precious political capital that they have left, defending all of this. And if they don't, we'll change it. And if they do, they may slow us down and we'll make them pay a political price. That's how the game's played, and that's how it has to be played.
So, Bobby, real quick,
go ahead.
Department of Governmental Efficiency is what the DOGE stands for. So go ahead.
Yes, Department of Government Efficiency.
Yes. So I want to bring up about, I really believe that we, especially this past year, a cultural shift is taking place, and especially now after the election, DEI is going away. Look at all the corporations that are giving up, they're closing their DEI departments, big corporations.
Yep.
So, and the trans culture seems to be going away. More people are speaking out against that. We've had a lot of wins in 2024. The Supreme Court rulings were epic, which is, and I think one of the largest one, and I mentioned it earlier, was the Chevron deference.
Yeah.
And that decision is which is about an agency cannot dictate law.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's only our Congress is writes and makes and passes laws, not an agency, not an unelected bureaucratic agency. This is huge. And I think the Department of Government Efficiency is going to be, going after that a lot. So we have a lot of good things that has happened in 2024. AI in advancements through Twitter or X's AI, and particularly, I used Grok for the first time today, and it's Grok 2. And I asked Grok, what are some of the notable things of 2024? Well, it gave me a whole world view of things, and I go, okay, well, let's now put it to the U.S. Well, then now let's put it to Oregon, and and so. The number one thing was Trump's reelection, and it was elections around the world. There's been some such notable elections around the world.
Yep.
Also, the completion of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That was epic. 5 years, to put that back together. The damage of Hurricane Helene that has been has been something that people have seen a lot of. And if we had, going back to everybody's comment about honest media, had we had honest media, there would be so much more pressure on the Biden administration to help those people that have FEMA. I mean, imagine FEMA, a government agency, going, no, don't go to any, if there's a Trump sign, don't go to them.
Yeah.
You know, this is an agency that all of our taxpayer money goes to. They work for us.
I'd like to make a quick comment on that, Sonny, because I just had to say this. This whole thing, if you think about it, one of the things that the left has always hit us with is you can't talk about social issues, right? Or these things, don't belong in the public square, namely religion, right? When the reality is, all of politics, the undergirding of it is what you should do, right? What else is the reason for law other than to determine what you should do? And what determines what you should do is morality. And what determines what morality is religion. And this whole thing has been about the elimination of Judeo-Christianity, which is in effect saying the elimination of Western civilization. And that's what the left is about. And how do you eliminate Western civilization? You eliminate the ability to tell the truth. Nothing's more satanic than making everything to be a lie, destroying the language so that you can't speak the truth. And you look around at all of the things they've done. This whole thing around the pronouns, for example, is a perfect example of that. This whole thing around a man standing in front of you, a grown blah, blah, blah man standing in front of you and telling you he's a woman, and having a whole infrastructure society agreeing with him, or having grown men in the coaching women's volleyball who refuse to defend those women. I mean, that is sick. but that is what they're trying to impose upon us. So at the end of the day, it's all about morality, all of it, and everything else flows from that.
They want to flip right and wrong.
They want to flip right and wrong. Exactly. And you cannot get away from that. If you want to fix the problem, for example, of young men going to prison, you have to first fix the family. The way you fix the family is you got to get a man and a woman to stay married, raising those kids. That's morality, because if you don't, those boys go to jail. That's just how it is, right? And so at the end of the day, it's a moral problem. And everything the left puts in place is designed to destroy the moral infrastructure so they can usher in communism. You look at the public school system, everything it does is designed to destroy morality. Give girls birth control behind their parents' back. Give girls the ability to get abortion behind their parents' back. Encouraging, sex education, which really means is that sex education is go do sex is what they're doing. Changing your gender, whether it be mental gender or whether it be actually chopping body parts off, again, without the parents knowing it. All of this stuff is blatantly immoral. And if you destroy that, you destroy society. If society is destroyed, you can't have freedom. Because the reason you have freedom is because I generally expect you to stop at a stop sign. I generally expect you to drive on the right side of the road. You can't have policemen on every corner making sure we do that. We do that because it's right.
Yeah, and I think also they know that communism, it basically starts and ends with putting government on the throne and saying that's the new religion, that's the new deity. It's not a limited tool to protect your rights that's there to serve the people. It's a tool to lord over the people and impose on the people what a small group that believes that they know what's best for you believes should be imposed on you. And that's why COVID and everything that happened, that was like a microcosm of that. It really gave us a temporary sampling of what it looks like if you replace the system of freedom and limited government with the system of mandates and unlimited government that can intrude into every part of your life, because then they can impose these new moralities. They can decide that it's fine if a woman gets beat up at a volleyball game by a guy who thinks he's a woman or just says he's a woman, and then goes into the locker room and exposes himself to 5 inches away from these same women who had no say in whether they would have their privacy violated. We heard that from Riley Gaines, and we know that that's actually what happened. That people woke up to that and changed it. But having a government powerful enough to force people to accept that, this is where 2024 was about taking it back.
Yeah.
It was about taking it back and restoring government to its proper role, which is very limited, and one which is actually able to address these larger problems in our society that involve protecting our freedoms, which they've been terrible at. They've been destroying our freedoms.
Yeah.
And this is a huge reversal. I wish we had better news in Oregon.
I have some good news.
Okay.
So the Oregon Ducks went undefeated, 12-0, and which was a record in their first season in the Big Ten.
Yep.
All right, but also in Oregon, and they also won their championship against Penn State. But in Oregon, you know what? While we didn't win the statewide races that we wanted to win in Oregon, we killed every single of those awful initiatives.
Yeah, the initiatives went our way for sure.
That and ranked choice voting was, one of the most egregious ones.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. Other than that, I don't have a lot of good news for Oregon. I hate to say.
Well, but I mean, the rest of the country moving in the right direction, just like having a president and a country that's doing the right thing can influence other countries, it can affect Oregon quite directly. And I would love to see some of these folks in Oregon who could maybe find common ground. Like maybe some of them would like to see some infrastructure get built. Great. Let's build the right infrastructure, not garbage, phony infrastructure that doesn't do anything and makes us think we're going to control the world's temperature. And by the way, let them defend all the Doge stuff. Let the Oregon politicians go to the mat saying, what I really need to do is stick as many gender confused males into women's locker rooms. Let's do that. And Oregon can be the bad example, which maybe Oregonians will wake up to.
Yeah. So I have one more good news, and I'm posting it down here. And this is from Oregon Catalyst. And it is Oregon charts, things that through the year. And one that was really good, and this is a way that Oregon is going in Oregon's Trump vote. In 2016, it was 39%. Mm-hmm. In 2020, it was 40%. Wow. In 2024, it was 42%. Okay. So that is going higher. And
that's a win. That's a win.
That is a win.
Progress. Yeah.
Yeah. And also in Oregon, it is 87% of Oregonians think that if China owns TikTok, it ought to be banned. That's great. It has many things that are in this in graphs. And one that was really sad is about the Oregon manufacturing was doing really great until the corporate activities tax, the CAT tax, fully kicked in. And then that was in January 2023, and it just started going down, dropping several, like 4% of manufacturing employment.
Remember the whole thing, and I know we'll have weeks and months to talk about this stuff, but remember the how the CHIPS Act and all the stuff that they were doing in the state government as well. We're going to lure all these companies in to rapidly expand and turn Oregon into this semiconductor machine. And then we lost to Ohio, and we lost to Arizona. And now I just saw the other day that Kotek literally has decided she's throwing in the towel. She's not going to bother to bring more land, which she has a special power given to her by the state legislature to bring more land into the urban growth boundaries so they can offer expansion capabilities to Intel out in Hillsborough. Yeah. Intel is in trouble, and they're hurting, and Oregon is in trouble as a result of being unable to cater to them or any other companies to come here. It's a bad business environment, and they don't care. They aren't doing anything about it. Tina Kotek is facing re-election in 2026, and she was not somebody that Democrats were in the general election were putting in their voters pamphlets saying, look who endorsed me, the governor. Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another thing too, and here's another positive. If you stop to think about it, because of the way that our electoral system works, why would a presidential candidate, in say Trump's case, spend any time in Oregon, Washington, and California? They wrote them off, and so why bother? And they still inched rightward big time, in spite of the fact that they weren't getting any attention. Imagine how much attention they might get if it started getting close, and it's getting close. You look at the county by county in California, Washington, and Oregon.
Mhm.
It's it's overwhelmingly, pro-conservative, pro-Republican. And those counties that are super liberal around those cities, they're inching in the right direction because of the things that you just described. So I think there's ultimately it's not a win right now, but the progress is in the right direction.
It
And we
is.
did fire Mike Schmidt in Portland, so he's being replaced in the
Yes.
Schmidt show. So,
There is hope.
there's hope. If Portland can start writing its direction and the rest of the state can see the writing on the wall, maybe things can start to reverse. But we also have to do our work here in Oregon and explain it. We got to be communicators and get these points across. And
Yeah.
frankly, we got to make sure that people understand that regardless of the garbage they hear in the media, where they say, President Trump hates Latinos or something. And it's like, no, actually, he's deporting the criminals first, the rapists, the murderers, the 650,000 people that Biden let in with criminal records who don't belong here. Those people are leaving first. How are you about that?
Actually,
Okay.
he gained because of his immigration stance, wanting lawful immigration. He gains more Hispanic voters respect and vote because of that.
That's right. He actually
They
got
don't want
record.
those people that waited in line, people that have come here lawfully are pissed that the border is wide open like this and that we don't know who has entered this country.
Well, their neighborhoods are hurt first by this stuff.
Yes.
And that's the thing. They feel that immediately because they're not going to Bellevue.
Yeah.
They're not going to Lake Oswego. They're going
Right.
to South
Yeah,
California.
Tren de Agua is not heading for Lake Oswego first. They're heading for whatever neighborhood they think they can embed themselves in and then subjugate those people. And they love it when there's people who don't want to fund law enforcement and don't want to enforce laws against all the things that these guys are up to. And I think that Tren de Agua is going to have a FBI task force chasing it down here pretty soon.
Oh, yeah. I think as soon as Trump comes in, he'll deem them to be a terror group or something. And, we'll just get rid of them along with the MS-13 quite in short order. Oh, and I'll tell you, Tom Homan, I'm so excited about our new border guy.
Yeah, he made it clear that they're going to pull out all the stops and they're going to start sending these people out of the country who are awful. And frankly, the people who lost their asylum cases, they lost. It was phony to begin with, which is why so many of them lost. And now it's time to go back to the country, make that country a better country, maybe try to come in legally later, but don't come to a sanctuary city and hide out like in Oregon.
Many of the countries that these people are coming from are going, oh, yes, we'll take them all back. Even Guatemala said, we'll take back anybody you kick out. So it's like the writing's on the wall. They see their funding will get cut.
Well, they know their trade. They'll get tariffs too.
I love about Holman is a plain speaker. He doesn't begin his conversations talking about his middle-class background, right? He tells you exactly where he's coming from and exactly what he's going to do. And the second piece I love about him is he talks about going after personally these politicians who support this stuff. So it's not just about changing these laws. It's about you personally, the mayor such and such or leader such and such. You personally will be held responsible for this. That's how you get these people to behave.
Yeah, he's the one who said, look, this is clearly, as has been adjudicated repeatedly, it's the province of federal law, the border, immigration, customs enforcement. And if you obstruct that, he cited the exact U.S. code, line of U.S. code that these guys might run afoul of. And, by the way, it's not just, I would like to see in Oregon what's been happening in Chicago. The mayor of Chicago is absolutely being roasted over a spit by his own people. You should see all of the black people go into the city council and reaming that guy and the city council. And they're using language that needs to be heard by that city council, because they've literally got public services collapsing. You know, they don't have the police sufficiently funded, their education system's in the toilet, and they just spent $725 million, which is a heap of money for a city, accommodating the illegal immigrants that were brought in, the asylum seekers all over Chicago. And now Brandon Johnson wants to raise property taxes to pay for it. He tried to sneak it through. Yeah. I hope they try this stuff in Oregon so that we can all expose them for doing that.
Oh.
Well, you know, Kevin, we might get to see our own Attorney General arrested for interfering with illegals being deported. You know, he's the one, he's just said, Dan Rayfield has said that he's created a task force that's going to work absolutely against Trump in anything and everything.
Yeah.
And including, and that we're a sanctuary state and we're not gonna cooperate. And Holman says, we will arrest you. This is an arrestable offense.
Yeah.
So we might see our governor arrested, or we'll see Dan Rayfield arrested. I don't know, but bring it on. Because
while they don't solve the problems of actual citizens who are the ones who, for now, should be the only ones electing them to office. And that's the thing, is that they are not addressing the problems facing this state. Meanwhile, they're all in on all these progressive, you know, suicide programs to just destroy the state. Yeah. I think that we want them defending the indefensible and paying the price for it politically and legally.
And this is the party of democracy, by the way. They lose an election, and so we're going to do everything we can to not follow the law. This is the party of democracy. This is the party that's talking about seceding from the union, and this kind of behavior leads to that sort of thing, right? They're essentially driving us towards secession or driving us towards civil war. That's what they want. They've done it before. Why not?
Yeah,
that's true.
You know, with Tom Homan and the immigration situation here in Oregon, it's going to be very, very interesting. We're just going to have to see what happens with that. As far as I hate it. I lost my.
But I know what you're tracking on, and I think this is why the fight in Oregon is on the front line of all this battle that's coming. Other places are going to get their act together. Oregon's going to be the poster child for what's going wrong and what's being done wrong. And if the progressive Democrats want to go and fall on their sword for these policies, they should go ahead and do that. So we can all make sure that everybody understands they're being poorly led and poorly represented in this state. Expose the truth. That's going to be one. There's a friend of mine who loves to say this: all progress starts with telling the truth. It does, and that Oregon needs it. And like you said, the mission of getting communism in there, Don, is banning the truth. Yeah. And then replacing it with lies. What better place to fight that fight than the state of Oregon?
Yeah. And here's an interesting factoid that jumps in just with this stuff. Of the red states over the last 4 years, 19 of the 20 states with the highest proportional job growth from February 20 to February 24 are states that voted for Trump. So 19 of the 20 that reported the highest growth. Is that a surprise? They're red states.
So where my thought was going was that if Trump is talking about enacting in-person, same-day voting, 1-day voting on paper with ID, if that happens, along with Judicial Watch's lawsuit to clean up our voter rolls,
yep,
and we absolutely go out and register Republicans, we can turn this state around. I believe we will have, with honest elections, clean voter rolls, You know, like, for example, I know of two people that live out of state and received and are registered in the state they live and receive the states that they live in and Oregon's ballot.
Yeah.
That's two people that I know of. And there's a lot of that. And so I think if those types of things happen, it is going to be, we can turn this state around. And I believe we're more Republican than people actually think.
That's right. And we should start with the people who clearly are Republicans and aren't registered Republican, because there's
Yes.
a bunch of them self-identifying. They just did in the last election. Let's talk to them. Let's go on offense and make sure they understand. And it does involve fighting the fight against the entrenched fake news media and Oregon's own little deep state. Those people have to be held accountable, and they should be. That's how we fix it. That's how we fix it. We turn it into votes. So I'm optimistic. We're the grand optimistic party, and we know we can fix it, even in Oregon.
I think we can. I'll give you another little positive. You know, I was the chair of Umatilla County Republicans. I'm no longer the chair. And at the last meeting that we had, well, it was in December. It was more of a party, actually. A statistic that I looked up just in Umatilla County I was 6 years as the chair. In those 6 years, Democrats lost 22 voters and Republicans had gained over 2,500 voters in Umatilla County.
That's good.
Now, is that all the party? Part of it is because we're out there. We're out there helping people, letting people know we're coming to them to help register them, change their voter registration and all of that.
Yeah.
But part of it is what the Democrats are doing in Oregon. People are going, I'm done. You know, a lot of people are leaving, but those that are here, I mean, I know Democrats that they go, oh yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I always vote Republican. Well, now they're changing their voter registration, and they have been for a few years. And so anybody can register somebody to vote. We could all carry voter registrations in our cars, because when that time happens, there you go. So I am optimistic, but there has to be some changes in Oregon in order for us to
be some machinery to do it. Yeah,
and there's less fear too. I mean, you look at one of the less spoken about results of this election is people are now saying, "Oh, many of my compatriots think the same way I do. It's okay to speak about it. It's okay to be a Republican. It's okay to put a bumper sticker on my car, put a sign in my yard." We literally had a situation in Oregon and Washington where you were afraid to do those sorts of things, and pretty much with good reason. But the results of the last couple of years is making it easier and easier for people, particularly young people, to be able to say, I disagree with this stuff. And then it takes time to come to fruition. And now we're reaching a point where people are feeling more free that they can say stuff. So I do think we're winning. The game's not over, right? You can look at this like you look at a football game, for example. Let's say it's like just past halftime is the third quarter. We've been coming back. You know, we were behind like 20-0 at the end of the first quarter, 35-3 at the end of the second. But at the end of the second quarter, we started getting first downs for the first time, right? And so now we're actually getting field goals and touchdowns.
We get some better field position here.
Yes. Yes.
Right. You know, and then I think we're gonna complete some long passes here. We have to have good candidates. We got to make sure we recruit and run and support them. And we have to communicate and be out there in the public, making sure that they understand that it's not just happening in DC, it's happening here. And you're right. I think some of the fear of being canceled has been reduced. Maybe this is a grand opportunity for people to start feeling some pride, not only in our country, but maybe in a state that could turn itself around. Just think how great that would be. Well, I think we hit everything tonight. This is a great show. By the way, folks, no show tomorrow night, I don't think. It's New Year's Eve. So everyone should celebrate that and enjoy that. Watch the ball drop and get geared up for 2025. We just talked about a grand, optimistic vision for 2025 that you can all be a part of. We're proud to continue doing this in the captive audience, and I feel like we're doing what David would want us to do, which is continuing to carry this forward and speak out. Let everyone know, just like Don said, you're not a captive here. You're not going to be canceled. You're not going to be canceled here, and you don't have to be canceled anywhere. We'll speak the truth, and we'll say what we really think, and let the chips fall where they may. And I think they're going to fall in the right direction for us in 2025. So, any last thoughts for 2024 here, Suni and Don?
I say pray for everybody that was elected. Pray for President Trump and Vice President-elect Vance, that they all stay safe through and January 20th, and that and the cabinet goes forward.
And I would just add to that, never forget, we won the battle, but we haven't won the war. And we need to stay in there and see this thing through to the end. But thanks to you all for being involved with this. This has been a blast doing it, and it really feels good to be feeling like we're all together doing something for our country rather than sitting on the sidelines and watching it go to pot. So this has been awesome.
And protect our troops, pray for them, our first responders, and freedom fighters everywhere. Well, that's a wrap, folks. It's been a great show. Please share it with everyone you can. And we will see you in 2025 on the next episode of the Captive Audience. Probably Friday, I'm guessing, Suni. We'll probably do one Friday.
No, Don and I are going to do one Wednesday.
Oh, you are? Fantastic.
We're going to start the new year off right on the 1st.
Good.
Absolutely.
I'm anxious to hear and see that one. I'm sure you're going to get into some predictions too. By then you'll know some bowl results, by the way, I think as well. So
oh yeah, pray for the Ducks.
Pray for the Ducks. They'll be exactly. Pray for the Ducks. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. God bless all of you, and thanks for watching us. And we will see you on Wednesday in the new year. See you next year.
Good night.